who is needed to build a software platform. So we need to, I would say, we need to see a lot of people for certain roles, and then we have certain roles where there may be one person who's fit for the role. So our talent acquisition puzzle is a little different than most, but all good fun.
Okay, Judy, thank you for that introduction to RMS. We just got a question from the audience saying you couldn't hear. If you're in the audience right now, let us know if you can hear us. Let's shoot a question or a feedback, and want to make sure you can hear us before we go on.
Are we good?
I think we might be good. We certainly look good on our end. All right, well, let's keep going. Our next company is Joe is here with Coit, and Joe, you tell us a little bit about what Coit Group does.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So we were founded in 2000, right during the one of the big .com busts, right? So, you know, we set off to start Coit to really focus on building an agency that really would allow to create a great candidate experience. We saw agencies out there like really thinking short term, and we really wanted to go out there and create an agency that you know, was unique. One of our core values is serve our clients or our customers' interests first. So we really wanted to go out there and treat the candidates as if, you know, we were bringing you know, that aggressive headhunter approach with the polish of an internal corporate recruiter. You know, candidate experience is so important to us, and you know, we really want to think, you know, long term and make sure that, you know, when we are out there working with, you know, candidates and clients, that we're really providing that white glove treatment. And I think that resonates in the type of work we've been able to deliver over the years. We have been fortunate to be closely aligned with great partners, including Sequoia Capital, Greylock Partners, and Andreessen Horowitz. And we continue to provide their portfolio companies strategic recruiting solutions. You know, we really started off, you know, working with early stage companies, really, you know, going out there and finding, you know, engineers, product folks, and then over the years, really elevated to, you know, Series C, Series D companies where, you know, it's really hit the gas and, you know, hire a greater volume of candidates with urgency. Today, Coit is primarily focused on project-based recruiting. It's called recruitment process outsourcing, and it's a form of business process outsourcing where the employer outsources or transfers most of the recruiting activities to their external partner like Coit. So, you know, we work with great companies where we go in there and really embed ourselves in the company and really try to elevate that candidate experience and provide, you know, a great process for the candidates.
Thank you, Joe. So we're really excited about this webinar today because we have a true expert from an in-house perspective and from an agency perspective on how to create a great experience, because both Joe and Judy have each been involved in hiring hundreds and hundreds of people in their careers. This is absolutely tremendous. Very briefly about Eightfold. Eightfold is a technology company, and we are building people management for the AI era. Our platform is built on top of AI technology to use the full capability of this type of technology in truly unprecedented ways. And we're helping companies like these build healthy talent pipelines, search and use their ATS to create a profit center from ATS. We're helping them take meaningful action toward diversity and inclusion goals, including hiring without bias. And we are helping them really generally take the full use of the data that they have, the data that they can gather to transform their talent experience. And so we're proud in particular to have been named a Gartner Cool vendor in the human capital management for talent acquisition in 2018. All right, well, enough about us.
Good stuff.
Let's get into it. There's this problem in talent today. I think it's something that all of us have experienced as job seekers ourselves in our careers. And it's that the people looking for new jobs simply often have a very tough experience. It's very hard to do, it's stressful, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And they end up applying for the wrong jobs, and they apply and don't hear back, and have all these kinds of issues that you see here and more. So I'd like to start by asking Joe and Judy some perspective on what are the reasons that create these kinds of issues that candidates experience today. Joe, if we can start with you, why is it that candidates are often struggling with these kinds of issues that we hear about at Eightfold and in many surveys?
I think the most obvious one we can talk about is the career sites. I mean, candidates, when they're out there actively looking for new opportunities, typically will go to a company's career site and apply online. And a lot of the frustration that candidates are feeling is built out of the fact that they, see an opportunity. Of course, probably not at RMS, Judy, because I'm sure you've got this all worked out. But I
wish I could tell you I was perfect.
But
by now, you've known me long enough to know that's not the truth.
But let's just say some of these larger companies like Google and Starbucks and big tech companies in the Valley, they're getting 6 to 7 million, from what I hear, applicants a year, and their talent acquisition team just isn't large enough to process all those resumes crossing their desks. So what you have is what's known as the black hole of career sites. I mean, the applicant tracking system is stuffed with candidates, and there's just not enough employees to go there and sift through the candidates. So what happens when you apply to this job? You're a great fit. You'd be a perfect candidate for this position, and no one responds to you. I mean, it's a frustrating process.
Right. I think technology, which is great, has produced volume, and the volume has beget volume. So we not only have our career sites, but we have the sites that we post to. We have people working on sites like, they're going to Glassdoor. I call it the sort of land and learn, which is your company website, your LinkedIn presence, and your Glassdoor presence. People will go to those sites and they will look for information about your company. And therefore, they have those opportunities plus other scraping sites as places to see jobs. And they may be posting actually from more than one venue. So you may not only see candidates posting once for a job, they may actually apply more than once. So we've created this great volume at the top of our pipeline for talent acquisition, but there's also a bias internally that the best candidates continue to come from outbound sourcing. And so there are some larger companies who I believe have set up their talent acquisition functions so that you have one group of outbound recruiters going after outbound hunting, and they're not allowed to even really spend a lot of time on the inbound, and they have people who are potentially earlier career recruiters or sourcers going through that inbound talent pool. But the volume does mean that it's really hard to get to the quality in the inbound talent pool. So I think we're all looking for solutions to say, hey, this is great, we've driven this demand, now how do we really qualify those leads? And really, just like anyone in marketing or sales, demand is great, pipeline's great, but how do we quantify and qualify those leads, which is how we actually get to the best experience for the people who are applying for our jobs, because they want to be seen and heard for the jobs for which they're qualified.
And how many times have you heard from a candidate that they go to a company's website and they look at the job description? Those job descriptions, companies are just, what does a company do when they open up a new rec? They go online and they look for some other company's job description and they try to edit it for their own company, right? That's just such a common practice. At Coit, we make it a priority to write these job descriptions based on actually Lou Adler's performance profile, which is specifically, let's tell the candidates, what does success look like in this role? What will you be doing in the first 90 days? What will you be doing in the first year? Really give the candidate an understanding of what specific duties are you going to be doing in this role, and how do we measure success? I mean, that's a lot better of a description or a billboard for your job than to actually just put something that's been reused hundreds of times before.
Well, you should be advertising the right product. If you want someone to be interested in it and fairly interested in it, then you should be able to tell them what it is. I mean, there's a lot out there which I think will help us with job descriptions. There are technology tools that help you to write them and to choose the best wording that will eliminate bias. And I see a connection between a tool like Eightfold, where you're calibrating around what you're looking for in a candidate, and then ultimately, I don't know how this will work yet, but you're somehow connecting that to the word choices that you make in the job description, and you're probably ending up with a really, really much better and improved result right from the beginning with the job description. And the, bigger companies struggle because job descriptions have to be written in a certain way, and our legal constraints sometimes are a little bit behind what we'd really like to be doing.
So I think that's a great segue, Judy, because I know it's on your next slide here, to talk about how companies are actually solving these problems and creating a better experience. So let's keep on this topic. Having a good and clear job description is a big part of it. What else do you do to turn this around and make candidates come away thinking, boy, our RMS really made me feel good?
And by the way, I think that what you're focusing on there, Steve, is the candidates who we actually identify who we really think are a good fit for our roles and for whom we might have an interesting opportunity. So we're skipping from all of that volume down to the point where we really know that you're attractive to us and we think we're going to be attractive to you. And at that point, I think you have to give them a really clear idea of what the process will be like. You need to be prompt and responsive, polite, considerate, realize that many, many people have jobs and have commitments. And, how many times do we say, well, you can come in 3 times in the middle of the day? Well, most candidates who have jobs, who are the ones often we want, can't always do that. So be flexible, be human, be considerate. Set up an interview process which is designed to give people a good result. Small things like, don't expect someone to talk about themselves for 8 hours. Give them a break, give them a snack, and give them really good feedback as best you can when the process is over. A lot of us are very, there are limitations of how much feedback we can give a candidate, but that doesn't mean you can't be prompt and say, hey, we've decided to move on or go with another candidate, or we're going to continue the process and we want you to be in it. So I think some of it's just human nature and politeness.
I think that brings up a good point, Judy. We interview our hiring managers in any engagement to really understand, tell me a little bit about your interview process before we, actually bring a candidate in front of them. And I've heard hiring managers actually say, hey, I like to leave the candidate in the lobby and be 20, 30 minutes late to picking them up, because that's what the customers do to us. So I want to see how he reacts after leaving him in the lobby for 30 minutes. It's horrifying to me because we're trying to provide a great candidate experience. This is your brand that you're out there promoting, and you want them to feel that, you want to create this negative impression, on your first interview. That's just a horrible way to get started. So, to really make sure that you are considerate to your candidates and you're providing that great, interview experience, I think is huge.
And I think companies do this in different ways. I'm a big fan of having a talent acquisition operations team that can actually spend time on this. And by the way, some people on the phone, on the webinar might be thinking, oh yeah, we all do that. And it's true, because what we all are trying to do are these basic, simple, natural things about bringing someone into our organization and letting them see who we are. But this also means that you really, before this gets, you need to whittle down and be really specific who you're spending time with, because you don't have time to spend on people who aren't a great fit, and they don't have time to spend on you if it's not a great fit. So what we're really saying is, before you even get to this point, be sure who you're inviting in, be sure why you're inviting them, and be sure that potentially this is somebody who could be a really good fit for you. And obviously manager, we could go on about manager training and interview panels, but I don't think that's for this conversation.
And I think that brings up a good point. I mean, I've even heard of hiring managers say that, you know, they bring a candidate in and they walk them out after the first interview because they didn't have a great, you know, their interview didn't go well. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this candidate took the day off work, you know, blocked out 4 hours of his day to come interview on site. And one person decided that, you know, out of a panel of maybe 4 or 5 interviews that he wasn't a good fit and walked them out. I mean, companies and candidates deserve to let the candidate run through the full course of the interview. I mean, if you're going to, it's your brand again, right. You want to make sure that, you know, you're going to allow this person to talk to 3 or 4 other people before you decide whether he's a good fit or not. So, I mean, I think it's really important that, you know, companies stick to their interview plan and let everybody talk to the candidate.
Well, and that type of example doesn't tell me, for example, someone might say to you, hey, we have technical rigor in our process. What that tells me is you were sloppy about who you invited in. If a candidate fails the first interview, unless there's something so exceptional going on that it was just a miss all the way around, which is really pretty unusual, that tells me that you were just sloppy and someone was inviting the wrong people in to spend time, because we need to be respectful, as you say, that candidate probably took a day off.
Yeah, and it's really up to that recruiter who invited that person in, or the initial hiring manager, to vet this candidate prior to bringing them on site. So I think that's what we strive for at Coit, is to make sure that we bring in candidates that ultimately are going to be a good fit for the role.
So why don't we roll to the next slide here and turn it over to Joe, just to take the rein on the conversation here. What are some of the things that you do as an agent to help make a great experience for the candidates that you're bringing in on behalf of the company? Yeah,
so, you know, I think, as you know, we typically, our engagements are to embed ourselves as the recruiting function within companies. And here at Coit, you know, we're seeing, you know, unprecedented challenges currently in like talent acquisition. I mean, companies are suffering from significant pain points such as lack of qualified recruiters out there. I mean, adapting to the change in the candidate base, you know, responding to rapid developments in technology. And so corporate clients aren't really taking the time to really focus on evaluating new technologies and investing in them. And we see at Coit a huge opportunity to help companies meet the requirements, you know, the recruitment challenges by investing in next generation technologies. We're seeing all sorts of great, you know, people have been talking about all these, you know, recruiting technologies out there, but we're seeing natural language processing, NLP. I mean, that's, you know, that's really coming up to speed, and chatbots can really leverage and improve the candidate experience by engaging with candidates right from, you know, the sourcing and screening phase, all the way to the interview scheduling and onboarding stages. I mean, this has really come a long way. We're seeing robotic process automation, which is essentially allowing companies to parse keywords in resumes and automate job postings in job portals. This is coming a long way. Especially we're seeing is machine learning. I mean, machine learning and AI is really coming up to speed, and that has become allowing companies to really focus on sourcing automation. And what this does is it really, the intelligence that you bake into these products like Eightfold are going in there and evaluating candidates and freeing up the recruiter's time to really focus on communication with the candidates. Because if a recruiter is going to spend 4, 5, 6 hours a day sourcing, they're not going to have the time to spend on the phone with the candidates, prepping them for interviews, vetting them so they don't show up at an interview unqualified. And, you know, we're seeing that the investment into these technologies is really advancing the candidate experience.
Can we talk a second about why the new technology is better than the old resume parsing, word identification technology, because one of the things that, what Joe just described, you could be thinking to yourself, okay, this is super cool, but how is this a better candidate experience? Now, those of us that are looking at this type of stuff know that, hey, if you apply to the RMS website and I have the career site and I have a chat bot and it acts as your agent and helps you kind of navigate by looking at what you've sent and helps you navigate what I've got out there and says, hey, you might be interested in this job instead of the one that you originally accessed the site for, or basically I could set up an alert so that that candidate would get a really relevant job alert if something new came. That's really different than the old sort of sourcing, sorting, parsing technology. So maybe I just answered my own question, but I didn't want it to sound like, I agree with Joe that especially on the top of the pipeline, you want sourcing help, and that's a great place to use AI. But we also want to make sure that people understand that we really do believe that this type of technology will help the candidate experience, not hurt it, right? I mean, this is not a arm's length type of thing. This is a, hey, we're going to help you sort through the volume here on both sides of it. And that, I believe, is why Eightfold was actually founded, right?
Absolutely.
I think that that's the genesis behind the thought process.
Well, I think
it was from a candidate perspective of frustration, not from a recruiting agency or a TA perspective.
Well, I've been evaluating recruiting technology for the last 18 years, right? And Eightfold has been a company not since LinkedIn that I've gotten excited about, because I've really looked for a solution that will go out there and nurture and talk to my candidate base, my alumni networks, all the networks I've set up in the last 18 years, all the candidates we've worked with over the last 18 years. There's just not enough of myself and my team to go out there and constantly communicate with them. And so, companies send a newsletter, but a newsletter isn't personal. You can't drive specific information to your audience with just a blanket newsletter. So having a technology like Eightfold, where you can go out there and say, hey, look, I want to send, this hackathon information that Coit's sponsoring just to people who have engineering backgrounds. That's pretty relevant, right? I'm not, so many times
Right.
I would send something like that and my salespeople would be like, why are you sending this to me, right? I'm not an engineer. And likewise, when I have an enterprise sales director role and, I'm working, with, numerous companies trying to fill those roles, I want to be able to market to that audience and constantly be talking to these people and checking in with them. Like, recruiting is a timing issue. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's always about timing. And, there's so many candidates that I reach out to and they're like, oh yeah, the timing's not right. And then 3 months later, they end up somewhere else. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And he's like, oh, like a month later, I decided to make a move and you didn't call me. But if I had a system that was out there checking in with them regularly, this would, this would provide a better candidate experience. It would allow me to know, which candidates are ready for a move and be able to, engage with them.
Yeah, I once I interviewed a recruiter for sales who, I won't name the company except for it had the word sales in it. And I was super impressed by the fact that he talked about building his candidate relationships. And just what Joe said, it's true of many positions, but especially for sales recruiting, which is super important when you're trying to build a company from, product to early revenue to really growth stage. You really need salespeople. And because of commission plans and other things, timing is super, super important. And so what this guy told me was that he had a way of sort of understanding the timing, and he had set himself up almost a follow-up system because he knew when his candidates might actually be willing to make a move. And so automating that type of really cool initiative that this guy had just figured out is something that it could be really useful, especially in growth stage where you're looking for multiples of the same position.
I love that you both give us this great intro to what we're doing on the technology side to try to create a great candidate experience. Boil it down to these 4 words I think are really representative. And certainly it's a big motivation for us at Eightfold to build this technology and evangelize this technology because we've all been candidates. We're not just thinking about what the company needs, but what candidates need. And that first thing is personalization. You get that response back from a company, and at the bottom of the email, it says, please do not reply to this email, like it's an email from your bank. It's not that great an experience. So the process of looking for jobs should not feel impersonal, and technology can actually help give recruiters the chance to do what they do best, which is sell their companies and sell those positions and really be excited about them with those candidates. Relevancy also, again, as Joe, as you're referring to, by sending a technical webinar out to sales candidates or other people who may not care about that, the information that companies share has to be targeted to what the candidates are interested in, or that's also not only ineffective for the company, but it can feel bad for the candidate. They may feel like there's something wrong with what they're trying to do. Judy, you mentioned chatbots earlier, and Joe, you're talking about our RPA technology. Lots of these processes can be made much more interactive. And it's amazed me as a job candidate that job application processes are often still very manual. I've even been asked for physical paper. Even if a recruiter has something like a fax number in their signature block, that just feels very outdated. And people expect interactivity, they expect technology that works in the way that their consumer technology works today. And that's something which would create a great candidate experience too. And I think when you combine these first three things, you're going to end up with something that's much faster. And so speed is also very critical to using technology to create a great experience today. There's nothing more confounding, frankly, than receiving an email from a company 6 months after you started a new job asking if you're still interested in the position you applied to 6 months or more earlier. And that's just not going to leave a good impression of that company after that happens. Well, given all of that, we're thrilled today to announce here at Eightfold our latest product, the Personalized Career Site, which is designed to turn a company's public career site into a personalized, relevant, interactive, and fast experience. And here's a little bit about how we're doing that. We're going to do all these things not only because this is what candidates are really going to love, but also as an employer, it's going to improve your employer brand, because ultimately that brand that you focus on is just what your candidates think of you. So we want to deliver an experience that candidates are going to be impressed with, that will make candidates feel good, so that they'll think highly of you as a company. Using this product on your career site, you're going to have a link where candidates can either list their skills or simply upload a resume. And within a couple of seconds, your Eightfold powered career site will show the candidate a ranked list of the jobs for which they're qualified. Here's a job for which you're a great match, here's one for which you're a pretty good match, and so forth. And not only will it show that information, it will show them a personalized analysis that shows them exactly why they're a fit for that role. Why is their background? Why are your skills meeting the requirements of this job? Giving you a personalized job description. They're also going to get some personalized information about the things that really interest them. They can see the people who they'll be working with, some examples of their future coworkers, listed based on something they have in common. Here's people who went to the same college as you did. Here's people who worked at the same previous company as you did. Perhaps that will make you more comfortable coming to work here. Perhaps you'd like to network with these people. And they'll also see some relevant content. For example, a blog post that your company has posted on your career site that is relevant to them based on their background, anything on their resume. You had a company softball game. This is someone who played softball in college. You could draw that connection. That might be really interesting to that person. You're going to instantly get your candidates the right jobs with the right information in a, frankly, really friendly way, so that they can then choose to apply for those jobs with one click. No choice being taken away, just more information and more choice to empower that candidate, benefiting everybody. And we think this is going to be really revolutionary for how companies interact with candidates. And we think that this is something they'll really remember as well when they talk about your company later, whether or not they end up working for you.
I'm glad to hear that it's one click, because what we've been seeing just within our corporate clients is when we move to adding their ATS system, which oftentimes will require you to put your name, your email, additional information, we lose more than 50% of the applicants compared to if we just have the one-click LinkedIn apply. So candidates have the you know, the attention span of a mouse these days, right? So it's like people really just want to do that one-click apply. So that's huge.
It's that conversion, yeah.
And we really need an application.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. So it's helpful to us because it seems really antiquated, but as I mentioned, there are a lot of things which haven't changed in our legal system. So we need an application. And losing candidates over it drives us all crazy. It
does. And sometimes I just unlink the ATS from the LinkedIn postings just because I want to see some applicants because I see that the numbers drop off significantly. So
and that conversion is so important. A big aspect of the personalized career site is that it includes a built-in chatbot. So something that you don't have to go out and buy separately. You're going to get a fully interactive chatbot. We're calling Amy. After all, a good chatbot has a name. So Amy can guide your candidate through everything on this personalized site, take them through this entire application process, and also answer any question that you answer on your career site.
These chatbots are becoming they're becoming so great. I interacted with one the other day, and I was like, oh no, a chatbot. You know, like this is going to be horrible, and it was fun. You know, it was a really great experience, and you know, we had good banter. Me and this chatbot. Right. You know, so I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Sort of sad, you know, but
but a really good chatbot is a really great experience. I think for two reasons. If it's an AI-driven chatbot like Amy is, it's not going to get caught in a blind alley and not going to act like I don't want to, you know, I don't want to rip on old technology, but if you remember Clippy from back in the day, you could ask the same question over and over, but it would never give you anything new. A really AI-driven chatbot can have a true interaction without trying to fool someone to think that they're talking to a human, but they'll feel much better about it. And we think it's something that particularly is important to your millennial and Generation Z candidates who are used to using technology in this way. So your chatbot, Amy, is coming with your personalized career site.
We're old school, Judy. We just pick up the phone and call each other, right?
Well, yeah. Maybe not.
Another great option. Well, I'll stop with this pitch. There's a lot more to personalized career site. We'd love to tell you more about it one-on-one. But rather than do that, we'd like to answer some of your questions. We've been getting some great questions from the audience. I want to start with one I think for Joe specifically. This question is about collaboration and connecting with that candidate. This is someone who said they're a new recruiter and they'd like to understand how can they connect with the candidate and validate their experience so that the candidate feels comfortable using their services as an agent for them. So, Joe, if you can shed some light on that.
Well, I train all my recruiters to really not be robotic and, you know, just strictly, we're relationship driven, right? So we want to be, you know, we want to understand everything from our candidate. I mean, it's really important to, you know, to really go out there and get to know your candidates, not just specifically for, you know, what jobs they're interested in, but, you know, what do they want to do? What's their 5-year plan? You know, if this job's not right for you or this particular role that I'm reaching out to you is not right, tell me a little bit more about what you're looking for. And I think it's just really important to take great notes on the candidate, know what they're looking for, and, you know, just be prepared to continually engage them, you know, over your career. You know, it really is a relationship-based business, and it's more than just, you know, their specific skills. It's more about who they are, and, you know, is it going to be a great cultural fit? Because so many companies, you know, you can have the right skills, but, you know, you might not be a good cultural fit.
All right. I have another question here that I think is should direct toward Judy. This question is, how would you react if a candidate called you out for being late to the interview?
Well, it's kind of interesting because, you know, the candidate is wondering whether you're late to the interview because you have a late culture. Is everyone here late? Are they sometimes late? And they may be making a decision or a judgment based on whether they think that's a big deal or not, right? Because some companies are always late and some aren't. But just what I would do personally, what I would expect people to do is to simply apologize for being late before they had to call you on it. And then what I would say is, I really didn't mean to disrespect you or to, waste your time. Here's why I was late, and I look forward to spending some time with you. So I would pretty much fall on that sword right away. And I would want to make it real for them that I understood that being late might seem disrespectful and that wasn't my intent at all. But realize that they are judging you. And you may have a late culture, in which case that person might not like it. And other people might be thinking, hey, it's no big deal, 10 minutes. I mean, especially with traffic and things, it used to be if a candidate was late, they didn't get the job. These days in the Bay Area, you'd love to have people be on time for everything, but they're just not. So similarly, I wouldn't rule a candidate out for being late. I mean, I don't want to tell all candidates to be late, but my gosh, if a candidate is a great candidate and, has a valid reason, I'm going to call the candidate out for that? I think it goes both ways. I mean, people have childcare, they have traffic, they have jobs, and we have, it's just tough sometimes. Yeah,
my recommendation, if the candidate's going to be late, just to call the recruiter, because
right.
The recruiter is going to be able to call the hiring manager and let them know. I mean, just advance warning is always
exactly.
important, right?
Yep.
Everybody knows how tough it is to commute around the Bay Area, and as long as people give some advance warning, I think people are pretty considerate about that.
Totally agree.
Another one, Judy, let's direct this one to you. With all this new technology we're talking about, what are you doing to train your HR team and your recruiters to use this new technology? Well,
I wish I could tell you that having my recruiters trained and using my ATS was as easy as using Eightfold. But part of that is because they were very involved in the choice of the tool. So we were looking at a variety of different AI-based tools. And when we started talking with Eightfold, our lead technical recruiter was like, I love this thing. And so he has taken it as his own mission, and he has inculcated the rest of the team with it, shall I say. And so as we look forward to other deployments, like right now we're talking about employer referrals using Eightfold, then we'll branch more into the operational side of the TA team, and we'll start to document workflow and processes. But our early adoption with the recruiters around the tool was seamless, and I know the Eightfold team spent a lot of time with them and made themselves available for office hours, but it was pretty much second nature part of their sourcing process, so there was no real major hurdle.
I would add something to that from the provider side. If you are evaluating any technology, make sure that you're comfortable that the company provides you some training, they have customer success, that if they've been responsive to you during the process that you're evaluating, and they introduce you to the folks you'll be working with going forward. That's a good sign that they need to be responsive to you. And as a customer of a technology company, ask a lot of questions, use your resources, your training resources, your customer success resources, use them, and they'll make you feel comfortable, and they'll show you how to use it. Mm-hmm. So raise your hand if you're not sure what you're doing with the tech yet.
I think if the technology mirrors the natural workflow, it's a lot easier to adopt, which is one of the reasons why we do have such a challenge with ATS, because it's not sequential, and many of them are set up to be super sequential, and the recruiter's just like, I don't have time for that. And so I'd love to see what we would like ultimately to understand is how our recruiters and sourcers could be spending more time in a tool like this, and how we support them operationally from the ATS without them hopefully even having to spend a lot of time in the ATS. So they can use a tool more built for sourcing and outreach, and people in TA ops can be spending a little more time on the support process through the ATS from application to offer and hire.
I think here at Coit too, we have a real strong learning culture. We spend Fridays in our office bringing in all of our embedded recruiters who are out in the field or sitting at corporate clients back into the corporate office to really promote training, right? So it could be leadership training, technology training, We bring in partners like LinkedIn, Eightfold, and all of our partners to just come in there and refresh our recruiters because, you know, everybody gets busy and everybody really focuses on hitting all these hiring goals, but it's really important to invest in your team. And I think that's what an agency does so well, is make sure that, hey, we bring them back and we're bringing them new tools. We're bringing Lou Adler's in our office, like, you know, once a quarter, just, you know, kind of just, you know, bringing back the basics, right? You know, there's a lot of basics in recruiting that get overlooked because everybody's moving at light speed, and it's just really important to slow down, remember the basics, and I think promoting that learning culture is huge in any company.
So, Joe, let me direct the next question to you first because of what you're just talking about. Your agency places recruiters on corporate sites as part of what you do.
Yes.
And we got a question here that said, really just, how do I know if I'm doing poorly? So let me maybe phrase that a little differently for you. If you're working with a company that's not offering a really good candidate experience,
yes,
is there something that you can do? Is there some way that you help find that and maybe coach the company through the folks that your recruiters are working with internally, whether that's hiring managers or other in-house HR staff? Is there something that you can do to help them recognize that and turn around the impression they may be leaving with their candidates?
Sure. I mean, Judy and I have worked together in the past, right? And so we've gone into companies where, you know, maybe certain hiring managers weren't providing a great candidate experience, or maybe the process. I mean, processes are so important in recruiting, right? So it's really important to go in there and define a process and make sure you stick to it, because the process will set you free. And if you can identify and have a streamlined process and you can work towards just making sure that everybody adheres to that process, I think you will find that, you know, you will be able to measure results pretty accurately and have a great experience.
So the candidates will tell a recruiter, typically an external recruiter. They may also tell an internal recruiter if they've had a bad experience. Unfortunately, and we can do surveys. We do surveys of our candidates. And that's an interesting thing, because a lot of people only like to do a new hire survey about the candidate experience. But if you actually survey all candidates, some may reply, some may not, but you do get some information. And then lastly, unless you figure it out, the candidates will go on Glassdoor and they will review you, and that's how you find out. And then you can do a deep dive. I have called candidates. I have reached out on email. I shouldn't say called, but the person gave me their phone number. I reached out on Glassdoor to candidates and said, hey, sorry you had a bad experience. Let me know if you want to talk about it. And they did. Now that's kind of, you know, that's maybe a smaller company that you can do that. But the review was so vitriolic, I really wanted to find out what the person had gone through. I think the other thing is, you know, you get the feel for it. If candidates just start falling off the pipeline for no good reason, then it's just time to figure out what went on for them.
And feedback is so important. You know, I stress this learning culture. Candidates want to learn, whether positive or negative, about the feedback from their interview. And so many recruiters out there, good and bad, and I want to just classify just good and bad recruiters, just end up ghosting their candidates because they don't want to have that tough conversation about, hey, you weren't a good fit because, you know, you didn't present, you know, your presentation was poor, right? They just don't want to have that interaction. So what they do is they just never respond. And I think that it's so important to be able to communicate that information. Candidates want to hear it, and they respect you for having those tough conversations. So I think that's pretty important.
I think that's really important. I actually got multiple questions about ghosting. It sounds like people on the webinar here have had that experience. I think we all have. And being more professional, just having that tough conversation, even if it's going to be bad news for that candidate. Well, but they'd rather be let down than perhaps hear nothing.
Well, I'll tell you why good recruiters ghost their candidates. It's that example you just gave a few minutes ago, where 6 weeks later, they called the candidate and they said, hey, are you still available, right? What happened was the hiring manager still wanted to talk to more candidates, right? So he might have said, hey, you know what? I'm not really sure about this guy, Steve, right? So I'm going to talk to 6 more candidates. And, you know,
I get that a lot.
he had a trade show. He was traveling, you know, and you know, 4 or 5 weeks later, he talks to more candidates and then decides that the candidate he talked to, 6 weeks ago was the best candidate. And, that candidate's now moved on to another job, but he never heard from the recruiter. So recruiters tend to not want to cut the candidate loose. And they want to keep them in the pipeline, so they just never communicate any information.
And that is a very hard thing to communicate, I think, because there's really no nice way to, it's a tough one to say nicely. Hey, you're a great candidate. We liked you, but not so much. Like we really want to keep you around, but we need to check out other people. And that's a tough message sometimes to deliver, because who feels great about that?
That's right. That doesn't provide a great experience, right?
Exactly. I mean, so I think the other thing about process, which, some of this is just difficult at scale. But if you tell a candidate where you are in the process and say, hey, we're going to go through candidates, candidates don't always know, are you doing a slate? Are you gathering candidates and interview them all at once, or are you doing it sequentially, right? And so tell them, hey, in that case, you could say something like, hey, we've seen some initial candidates, but this is an important hire to us. We're going to a bunch of trade shows. We'll be back in touch in a couple weeks. And the candidate probably knows what's going on, but at least you have politely given them some, respect and feedback.
Over communicate, right? I mean,
right.
Let's face it. It's no secret that we're not talking to multiple people, right? But I think just being honest and transparent, which is one of our values at Coit, it's really important to be able to, set clear expectations to the candidate that, hey, we're going to be talking to multiple candidates and, deliver the tough feedback if it's necessary.
But managers goes too. And so that's one of the harder things for the TA department or the recruiter to deal with, is that, and that gets back to whether or not you have a hiring culture. So is everyone in the company, all the managers, do they understand their roles? Do they understand how important this is? Do they agree with the principles of, what you said, sort of personalization, relevance, being fast? If people agree to that, then they don't sort of disappear. And so I think it's a lot about, do you have a culture where managers understand that it's really important for them to be part of the hiring process? Here at RMS, we historically have had somewhat of a culture in some of our groups that the managers just open the rec and give us some candidates. And we have a new CEO and some new technical leadership that has really changed the culture of technical hiring, and they really own vetting those candidates and networking and making sure that they're making the best hiring decisions. So that's been a huge change for us. And those managers, by the way, are supporting the Eightfold tool. I mean, they saw it and they got behind it.
This is some wonderful stuff about corporate culture and creating a hiring culture and having the tough conversation, telling people, we like you, we need to do this first. I think we have time for one more question. So let's make this a lightning round. And I really like this one because I think it's something we've all experienced as candidates too. So if a candidate is really nervous, how can you help them have a better experience as a candidate in 30 seconds? What do you think, Joe?
Well, I think it's normal for candidates to be nervous, right? I mean, this is a big move. Everybody gets.
Everyone's nervous. Let's say really nervous, shaking nervous. Something you can do? Yeah,
as a recruiter, I want to just calm them down. Get them a glass of water, tell them to take a deep breath. Give them some advice that. And I think most hiring managers recognize a nervous candidate pretty quickly, and take the time to kind of see through maybe their behavioral interviewing skills, right? But I think just try to calm them down.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the first part of the interview is establishing that rapport and figuring out how to do that, and then if the person's seriously shaking, Joe said get up and get some water. That's what I would do. I would say, hey, I want to show you this site, or, let's get a drink. I want a drink. Let's go get one together, and get the person up and walking out of the room and then come back. I mean, if the person really is seriously looking like they're in difficulty, that's what I would do.
Give them water, may distract them just a little bit.
Exactly, anything, exactly.
And what I tell the hiring managers is park your first impression at the door. Like, don't, so many candidates, you first meet them and you're like, oh my God, no, right? And then they warm up to you as the interview goes on, as they start to relax and come into themselves, that you start to you start to, get the real candidate experience.
Well, this has been great. Judy, Joe, would like to thank you both for joining us. RMS, Coit, thank you all for joining us on the webinar today. And thank you so much for your questions and attention. And we look forward to seeing you the next time.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Joe.
Thank you, Judy. Always a pleasure.